this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus. I woke up this morning with my mind.
Hello, hey everyone, Joey Sparks, reminding you God's mercies are new once again this morning. Over 500 years ago, prior to 500 years ago, there was this prevailing thought that our universe or our solar system, kind of all creation in space, was geocentric, that the Earth was the center of everything. But that left several things not quite making sense. There were some numbers, some calculations, some orbits that just didn't quite fit. It especially impacted the tracking of the calendar. Could not figure out the exact way to track days and how they shifted and changed. In 1543, when Copernicus successfully proved, argued, and published this heliocentric model, sun is at the center of our solar system. And all those inconsistencies from before went away. They became consistent. They all began to click. They all began to make sense. Paul writes to the church in Colossae. He writes to them about a shared common faith. And he writes to them about a life that they already are living, a life in which everything begins to click. Everything begins to fit because Christ is at the center of their lives. A Christocentric model. It's what happens when we give our lives to Him in faith. There's this beautiful section in chapter 1 where Christ is exalted. Some have suggested it may have been an ancient hymn, first century hymn for the church. We don't know that for sure, but it's interesting to consider. And within those handful of verses, listen to the various descriptions of Christ. He's the image of God. He's the firstborn of creation. He's the head of the church. He's the firstborn from the dead. He's the fullness of God bodily. And He is the agent of reconciliation. Here's who He is. Here's what He then does. He reconciles with who He is. One author has said this about Christ: we can never make too much of Christ. Never have too high thoughts of Christ. Never love Christ too much. Never trust Christ too much. Never lay too much weight on Christ. Never speak too highly of praise of Christ. Christ is worthy of all honor. We can give Him. Colossians would argue just that. Colossians would also go on to talk about, and I hope you'll notice this in the weeks to come, the blessings that come when Christ is at the center of our lives. It impacts how we live in relationship to putting off sin. It relates to how we treat one another. It relates to our homes. It relates to everything else that we would enjoy and experience in this life. We thank you so much for watching this morning. It's our prayer that God's timeless word will be your meditation all day today.
I woke up this morning